All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Dungan-Mott Music Movie Podcast. I'm Devin Dunnigan, and here with me, as always, is Mr. Stephen Mott. How you doing, brother?
Great brother Jake Z, drummer, fricky dang, rat.
All righty, so we are back today with another brand spanking new episode, and this time we're going to be trying something a little bit different. So another change in format compared to the old school album reviews that we used to do. So I guess this will be kind of halfway an album review, but we're going to be doing an album battle. So Battle of the Albums 1984 by Van Halen and 5150 by Van Halen. So I know a lot of people do these kind of track by tracks online. I see a lot of them, but I came up with the idea. Let's kind of try our attempt at this and see what happens. So the way I think is best to do this is just go through the tracks one by one. So the first track on 1984, the first track on 5150, and talk about what we think of each song, and then give the track that we prefer. And then at the end of it, whichever album has the more tracks is, of course, the one that we prefer to the other. So, kind of, I guess, a common sense based concept there. So, first up with 1984, and the final album, Until a Different Kind of Truth, with David Lee Roth. He would end up leaving the band in 1985 to go off and do his solo thing. And it's very much a change in pace compared to the prior albums. It's much more of a poppy kind of album. There's a lot more keyboards added into the mix, especially with like the title track and then Jump, I'll Wait, stuff like that. And it was a huge record. It pushed Van Halen to being one of the biggest bands, if not the biggest rock band in the entire world at that time. And then going forward to 5150, so the follow up to 1984, and me and Steven talked about this off air, but it's kind of the logical progression from 1984. But Eat 'Em and Smile is where I think most fans would have preferred Van Halen to go after 1984. So you've got a lot more synthesizers here, like 5150, but Inside, Why Can't This Be Love, Dreams, Love Comes Walking In. I mean, much more popular album. You have the electronic drums in there, and that was something that I believe, came into the mix during '84. I think there's a little bit of that on that album, but they really went into it when they were playing live, and then it kind of carried over into that 5150 album. I know fans are divided on that. Most people would have preferred Alex's more natural drumming, but whatever the case may be, it is what it is. It's unique to its own mix. And that album, of course, produced by Mick Jones and Don Landy, and of course Van Halen themselves. And that was first with Sammy Hagar. So Sammy Hagar joined, of course, the original singer in Montrose, and then he had a solo career of his own. He was just coming into his own right before he joined Van Halen. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, Sammy Hagar was just as big as Van Halen. I Can't Drive 55 took him to the top of the top." And even Sammy Hagar himself compares himself to Van Halen as being on the same wavelength, which is not true. I mean, the only thing that held 1984 out of the number one spot was Michael Jackson's Thriller, which is, I believe, the best-selling album of all time, or at least one of the best-selling albums of all time. But I will say this, 5150, we have reviewed it on the channel way back. I don't even think it's on this YouTube channel that we're on now. I think it's only on the other one. I may throw that up just the heck of it when we put this episode out. But I kind of bashed it. I think Steven kind of bashed it too. It was before I really gave the Van Hagar stuff a chance. I was really hating that stuff back then, and then I kind of warmed up to it, and then now I'm kind of very critical of it. But I will say I enjoy a lot of this record, and we'll talk about the tracks that I do like and the tracks, of course, I don't like. And in 1984, to me, it's classic. I love the album, but we're comparing each song and which song we like better. So, Stephen, I'm going to pass it off to you. Give your kind of opening comments, thoughts, opinions, feelings, however you want to say that, with 1984 and 5150.
Well, today is Sunday, May 19th, and yes, we're trying a new thing here, and Devin came up with the idea of the album thing, and I came up with the idea of the actual albums, just because they were very similar, and they were back to back, like in the discography, so like 2 years apart, and to me, for two different singers, this these two records, if you listen to them like back to back, I mean, they're not totally the same. The production is obviously different overall, but there's kind of the spirit of like at least half of the songs on each record of like the pop stuff on it, the stuff that was commercially the best. um, Both of these albums, especially 1984, could almost be considered like just like a greatest hits album. I mean, if you just look at stuff like how much hits was on that record that most people would know. I mean, obviously there's other stuff, before that, but I hope that makes sense. But anyway, so like 5150's got its fair share of stuff, but like it's not something everyday people would know as much as stuff like Jump. You know what I'm saying? Like, but anyway, I mean, both records are really good, but I mean, I'll get into it a little bit later of what my real, deeper opinion is about it. But I mean, the thing is, Eddie was writing the same stuff for but during this era point in time, he was into keyboard stuff, and he wasn't writing anything just to for any particular reason, like not just to write a hit or writing this riff to a song or writing this instrumental of a song to do us to be a certain way. He just wrote it like it was, and that was it. And you know, and then the singer, just it's up to them just to go what they wanted to do with it, and the band obviously. But I think it really depended on the singer of how the songs turned out. And like Devin pointed out before, like David Lee Roth could have made some of these songs on 5150 a lot better if it was him. Um, so we'll get into that later, but yeah.
All right, and just piggybacking off what you were talking about, how so off the air I talked about how 5150 could have, I mean, I think 5150 could have had Dave on any song on there, but I think Dave would have give the album much more of a punch, or lack of a better term, balls. I mean, it would have really pushed it to sounding like classic Van Halen. And I know that they did work on some of the material. I've heard Good Enough was one of them, and Summer Nights in particular was another. And I've heard Dreams also was a song that they had at least had in development when Dave ended up leaving. I know the rumor was for a long time that Summer Nights was recorded with Dave, but I'm sure it's not the same kind of song. I highly, highly doubt it, especially with the lyrics on that song, which we'll get there later, a little bit later. But I do. I think Dave could have taken a song like Dreams and took it to a different place than Sammy. Maybe not the melodic rock route that Sammy Hagar took the song, but it would have definitely had a similar spirit in a way and a similar vibe, but it would just probably would have had different lyrics and, of course, a different perspective for sure. I mean, it's kind of saying very, very kind of common sense based ideas there. But we might as well go ahead now and get into the album battle itself. So 1984 versus 5150. So I'm going to go through the track listing first on each album, and then we'll get into each song. So 1984, you have the title track starting things off. Then you have Jump, Panama, Top Jimmy, Drop Dead Legs, Hot for Teacher, I'll Wait, Girl Gone Bad, and House of Pain. And then you have on 5150, Good Enough, Why Can't This Be Love, Get Up, Dreams, Summer Nights, Best of Both Worlds, Love Walks In, the title track, and Inside. So starting off here, so you have 1984 on the 1984 album. Very much a sign of what was to come later on during the album. So it's essentially a keyboard, very experimental kind of track. Kind of reminds me of something like Van Halen 3, which is way, way farther ahead, but it's very experimental in its approach. It's of that time for sure. It's very 80s. And I think this was just in the general direction of where Eddie wanted to go and where he wanted to take the band itself. And him playing keyboards, I know that was a bone of contention between he and David Lee Roth about he was basically saying like, oh, Eddie should be the guitar player, he should be playing keyboards. But I think Eddie was trying to branch out and do other things more than just straight ahead rock and roll. And if you look at Eat 'Em and Smile, David Lee Roth definitely tried to go in the more straightforward Van Halen-esque route. But Eddie did branch out musically and try different things. So the 1984 track, I like it for what it is. And then on 5150, you have Good Enough. So starts out with this big bopper, Hello Baby at the beginning of it, and then it gets into more of this straightforward rock, kind of rock and roll song, hard rock song. And musically, I think it's very much in vein of the Diamond Dave era. I definitely think that this is Sammy Hagar trying to do Diamond Dave Van Halen type lyrics, quirky, kind of outside of the box sort of thing, and I think it totally falls flat. And I know I give this song a lot of praise when we did the 5150 review as this being one of the best songs from the album. I think this is kind of a dud. And I know this is going to kind of sound crazy, but I prefer 1984 to Good Enough. So that is 1 point for 1984 for me. So Stephen, take 1984 versus Good
Enough. Oh yes, the title track. Yes, 1984. I'm just really appalled that you would say that. I'm playing. Oh, so like I don't really know. I mean, it's just kind of a thing like with Good Enough to where Sammy. I don't know. I feel like it was a good opener, but it's one of those things like I don't know if that should have been the first thing that was ever put out. Not first thing that was ever put out by the band, but first song on the record to say, to introduce this new band, I guess. And then he goes too like far out there with it. Like and like Devin said, I don't think it's not the greatest song in the world, obviously. I think this is definitely a good example of like of how of how Dave could have really done a lot more with this riff and made it a lot more interesting, and Sammy just winds up kind of like just, I don't know. He just has a way about him. It's like if he goes too far and stays too long. Like he can't just put like one stupid thing in a song if he's gonna make the whole song stupid. You know. Oh, if that doesn't make any sense, but it does to me. Anyway, so relating to 1984, it's a keyboard instrumental, and I don't think much of that either. So I don't like either one of these as an opener. So I think they both should be omitted. So bye.
Well, which one do you prefer to the other? Even though you hate both of them, which one do you prefer?
Well, I would prefer good enough.
All right, that's good enough, I guess. So we move to the next track, Jump, and then Why Can't This Be Love? So Jump was the huge hit off of the album and introduced much more of the synthesizer sound combined with the classic Van Halen sound. To me, this is a great example of taking two completely different genres and combining them together. It's a hard thing to do. I know Kiss has done it all throughout their career. They kind of founded the latter parts of their career off of it. But I just think that overall, it's a perfect song near about. There's really nothing bad I can say about it. And then we go to Why Can't This Be Love? So this was the song where Mo Alston, who was the president of Warner Brothers, he was like, I don't want you guys calling yourselves Van Halen because it's going to fail like this. It's just call yourselves Van Hagar and be done with it. But then when they played this song for him, the story goes he stuck his finger up in the air and says, I smell money. So this was, I believe, the first single off of 5150. I'm not even going to bother going to research that. So if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments, please. But I like this song other than the freaking line, and it makes no sense at all. Time will tell if we stand the test of time. That is one of the worst lines to a song I have ever heard in my life. And or only time will tell if we stand the test. Whatever. You get the line I'm talking about. If you know Van Halen, know this album, this song, you know what I'm talking about. It's a widely hated and very stupid line for a song. Like maybe change it to time will tell if our love will last or something like that. I mean, whatever. I'd have to go back and look at the lyrics. But yeah, I love it. It's a good song, but I have to go with Jump. I think Jump is a perfect or nearly perfect pop song. And definitely one that cemented Van Halen as the biggest band in the world at that time. And I know this is one that Sammy Hagar refused to sing up until the For Unlawful Corner Knowledge tour. And then he played it with or sang it with the band all the way through the reunion where they opened the show with it. They didn't close the show with it, which was odd. But I know it was a comment. It was based off of a comment that David Lee Roth made of where he said, well, the only thing, Sammy Hagar will have to go up on stage every night and sing Jump. And then for a while they were playing Jump, but they'd have a fan sing it. I guess that became too crazy or chaotic. And so they stopped doing that. So I definitely prefer Why Can't This Be Love or Jump to Why Can't This Be Love. Man, I can't talk tonight. So, Steven, what are your thoughts?
No. So basically, I don't know. I just don't know. The thing is this is Rotten Tomatoes -100. Um, screw this song, screw this band, man. Like, honestly. So, um, so the thing is, like, 5150 is just a rotten tomato. Um, so let me get my album pulled up here. Okay, let's see. All right. Why Can't This Be Love? 2023 remaster, by the way. So they just remastered this. It doesn't sound any different to me, honestly. It was already pretty beefed up. But why can't this be love? Um, I mean, you take that and compare with Jump. I mean, those are two songs that are both really good. So, I mean, that'd be like us going through and reviewing a greatest hits album. You're gonna be like, oh, that one's good, that one's good, that one's really good. You know, I mean, I mean, so I mean, I'll just lie to you, right? I mean, I just say that Panama and Jump are just complete shit. So, I mean, that's what I'm gonna tell you. I'm just gonna say it's opposite day, because at this point, I mean, just listen to the songs like everybody's heard them. I mean, both of them are very pop oriented. Obviously, keyboard songs, and these two songs are a very good example of why I say that it doesn't matter. Like, musically, Eddie writes what he writes. You know, they can pick out what they want to, what they want to use for the records. The producers and the singer and whatever. Eddie's just gonna write what he writes, and I think just Sammy. The only difference is Sammy chose the more poppy direction of stuff, and the producers probably too, because they saw the potential for it and they wanted to make a really good album, because they figured if it was going to be a long running thing with Sammy and the band, they were going to have to make a good album for the first record and sell a lot, or or if the first record bombed, then there was probably going to be no more Sammy, and maybe no tour. So, um, that's just my outlook on that. They wanted to choose. They probably had a plethora of stuff to choose from. They chose stuff that would probably be selling the most commercially, because it was the mid '80s, and that this is about the time a lot of stuff's coming out, like you said, Thriller, and all this pop stuff. So they said, oh, we want to compete with that. We don't want to just keep on with the straight rock sound. So 50, the only difference to me, the main difference I should say, between 5150 and 84, 84 kind of stayed true besides the greatest hits stuff on that record, like the three or four. Yeah, the ones that I don't even have to mention really, but like Top Jimmy, stuff like that. Like, for example, and Drop Dead Legs, Girl Gone Bad, that kind of stuff. They stayed true to their older sound more with the production and just the overall style. And then they just randomly threw in these like greatest hits type stuff along with it, and you're like, okay, but like with 5150, it's more straight through, kind of the same in a way. Like, even like Good Enough had the production of the whole album, but it's kind of weird because 84 had a different production for like the greatest hit stuff, and then a different production for like the straight rock, just kind of more of a raw production for like Top Jimmy. It had kind of that sound to it that they added to it. Kind of, you could tell it's produced a little bit, but not very much. It was more raw sounding. So I don't know. I'm kind of drawn out, but I got sidetracked at first, so I kind of had to make up for it. Bye.
So which ones do you prefer?
I plead the second to third amendment and fifth. I prefer I prefer obviously Jump. I mean, because the solo. That's what stands out to me is the solo. Um, that's why that song hits live so good is because of that solo. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's really whether it's Sammy or Dave or Gary Sharon or whoever. You know, I don't even know if he ever did jump. I don't really care, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's just that's just that song is a little bit better because of that. So bye.
Alrighty, so the next track here is Panama, and then on 5150 you have Get Up. So Panama, it's a classic Van Halen song, of course. It's Eddie's ode to AC/DC, and if you listen to it closely, you can tell with that riff and the music and all, it's definitely a take on the AC/DC sound. And it's a greatest hits, so what more can I really say? Just like Jump, like it's played on the radio all the time. Probably one of the earliest memories I've ever had with Van Halen is hearing the song on the radio. Probably neck and neck with Jump, or Running with the Devil, or You Really Got Me, or Eruption into You Really Got Me, or Oh Pretty Woman. One of those songs had to have been the first Van Halen song that I ever heard. So then we go to Get Up. So musically, this is really, really heavy, and it's really kind of a speed metal type of song. But then Sammy comes in. Sammy Hagar as a lyricist has always, and I mean, even back when he was in Montrose, he has always been a weak lyricist. Now, I will say when he went solo, some of that really didn't it didn't show quite as bad, and I think it was because he had a lot of other people around him. But I think, especially with Van Halen, he did a lot of juvenile lyrics and just stupid stuff. And I know Sammy admitted to it, like especially a song like Source of Infection, which really doesn't have any lyrics whatsoever. While I really like that song, he talks about how he just didn't try. And I've heard other interviews with him, or at least read other interviews with him, where he just did not try. He just said, okay, Van Halen is a huge band. I've been given this opportunity. Let me just go in and do something. And like the first line of the song is, I'm going on into town. I'm going to be a fool, or going to town. I'm going to be a fool. Whatever the lyric is, whatever is to that effect. However the proper way of saying it is, but it's just very stupid. And he starts cussing like, that's bullshit. I mean, it's not my cup of tea. And I know Dave swore on a lot of his songs, but it's like cussing for the sake of cussing in this scenario. And I'm just like, it wasn't needed. Like when let's take a song like Sinner's Swing, when he said the F bomb in that song, like it kind of stuck out there. You're like, oh, okay, here's something. Like you didn't really expect that. Here it's just like, really, it's like a child who learned how to cuss in like elementary school or middle school decides to freestyle rap, and that's every word that comes out of his mouth. And it's like, well, it's just a bunch of jumbled stuff. And that's what Sammy Hagar is trying to do on the song like this. He's trying to be edgy and really bring home a punchier kind of lyrical concept, but it just doesn't work to me. And especially the chorus, like get up and make it work. It's just so freaking stupid. So obviously I give this to Panama. Much better song. But Get Up musically, I think Dave could have taken it to a place where it would have been really, really cool. And the solo on Get Up's actually really, really cool as well. But other than that, like the lyrics are complete shit. So then we move to Steven's take on both songs. everybody probably thought I was fixing to say we're moving to the next track because of the way this show's went with me so far, me naming off wrong songs, which that's going to be an outtake of me talking about Panama and comparing it to Why Can't This Be Love? But I digress. Stephen, take Panama and Get Up.
I don't even think we need to say anything here. Panama, yeah, and you have Get Up. I mean, and you're like, I'm just sitting here like, what am I listening to here? Like, seriously? Like, come on, Kiss. Okay, so they even did this. They even did Get Up during the 5150 tour, and just played it like it was just this great song, and they just rocked it out like it was just great lyrical concept, and just no. You're taking a greatest hit, and you're taking it and comparing it to one of the lowest points of like this, or the lowest point of this record, probably besides outside of Inside. That was great. That was a great concept right there, a great lyrical concept. But yeah. So let me get myself regrouped here. Okay. So we have 5150 and we have 1984. So 5150 was released in 1950. That's why it was 5150. And that's why it's so pop oriented, because Sammy Hagar, he wanted to, like I said, he wanted to make a really good entrance. And I think he knew if he stayed in Van Halen, he would make more money than he ever would as a solo artist continuing. But I think if he wouldn't have got in Van Halen, his career probably would have died off majorly, and he might have done small bars and stuff, but he wouldn't have been nearly as commercially successful for the remainder of his career. And I think he had already peaked as a solo artist. So I think if he wouldn't have gotten Van Halen, he would have just kept beating them same songs. He would have just kept beating "I Can't Drive 55" in the ground, and like some of these, I know he's not a one-hit wonder per se, but it kind of is for him, solo artist wise. But that's just my opinion, and I know a lot of people would disagree with that, but that's, I know what I mean by that. It may sound like, I know that's not his only hit, but if you ask an everyday person about Sammy Hagar, that's the song they're going to come to, and then you're going to say, well, what else do you know? Oh yeah, that stuff when he went in Van Halen,
All righty. So the next one here is Top Jimmy versus Dreams. So Top Jimmy, I know you mentioned earlier you thought it was kind of classic Van Halen. I view this as kind of a poppy turn on the Van Halen sound. It's got that kind of twangy guitar, which he would take further on Finish What You Started. It's a great song. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I think it's an amazing song. And I know the lyric concept, or the lyrical content, that's the better way to put it, was based on an actual person, Top Jimmy, and I can't remember the band's name. It's mentioned during the song, but I'm blank on it right now. But I think it's a great track. It's very different to Van Halen, or very different for Van Halen. But overall, it's, I don't know where I was going with that, but overall, it's a great song. I enjoy it for what it is. And then we go to Dreams, which is, to me, the crowning achievement of the entire Van Hagar canon. So this is the one song I will definitely say sticks out when I think about Van Hagar. And I know that Mick Jones said when Sammy came in, Sammy was able to bring the vocals to new heights, like stuff like he had never seen before. And Sammy definitely sings way above his range. And we talked about this off air or whatever, and we were talking about how Sammy and Stevens mentioned it during the show here, but it was much more of a Sammy Hagar singing to Eddie Van Halen, so therefore he was singing in a different range, and I felt like he strained his voice in a lot of instances. But here I think he actually does really, really well. And I definitely prefer this song to Top Jimmy, which I know to a lot of people is blasphemy. But I think this is the best Van Hagar song overall. And it's definitely kind of Jump Part 2 in a lot of ways. So it probably would have been better to compare this to Jump, but in the sequencing of the record, I think this is a better song than Top Jimmy. And I love Top Jimmy. And I think that down to the music, the lyrics, I think when Sammy's doing more melodic rock, I think that's his bread and butter. It seems like he's much more interested in that kind of music and much more genuine when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I have to give it to him. They're like the lyrics really don't stick out as being that bad on this song. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand on it. So that's one for 5150 so far for me. So Stephen, take Top Jimmy and Dreams.
Well, I mean, like you said, Dreams it was probably being worked up for a long time. I think it was around for a while, one of those types, and they just kind of. I mean, I just can't imagine Dave singing this. Like, can you imagine Dave trying to sing this high of a range? I mean, like he would probably, especially in his older years, trying to. I mean, he would kill himself trying to sing this song. Like, oh my God, that is so hilarious to me thinking about that. But like, I can see why like Dave never didn't want to do something with this riff, because I, oh my God, that he would that would be so funny. But anyway, so of the two, yes, I agree with you. But Top Jimmy, I mean, Top Jimmy is just one of those songs that's just, and it's an album track. Dreams is more of a radio type song. Top Jimmy is just one of those songs that is more just album oriented and just something for, for the latter part of the album, and just for not the main audience of the world. It's just more of a type Van Halen nut type song. Like, if you're a fanatic, then you would go back and listen to these albums all the way through, and people that would appreciate it and stuff. The Dreams is for the everyday person, and so it could sell records. So it's supposed to be appealing and stuff like that. But honestly, like, I mean, I like them in two different ways. So I mean, it's really, that's one of those things like that I knew I was going to run into with this type of video, because I mean, I could listen to both of them, and honestly, like, both of them are just as good, and like, because they're written by the same person musically. But I guess I'll just go to lyrically. Um, yes, I do think David Lee Roth is a lot better lyrically. Just even though Dreams is a really good song, just sit here and just tell me it has great lyrics to it. No. Bye.
All right. So you prefer Dreams to Top Jimmy or Top Jimmy to Dreams?
There's a ghost in my closet. There's monsters. So, yes. So yeah, I actually do prefer Dreams. If I was just gonna listen to one of these off the top of my head, like if I was sitting around like, oh, I'm gonna listen to Van Halen, I mean, my mind is not gonna jump to Top Jimmy, but just listening to it for for the listening purposes of the whole album, it's really good. But you know what I'm saying? If it's one to jump to, if I saw it, I'd be more likely to click on it. If that makes any sense.
All righty. So track number 5, Drop Dead Legs against Summer Night. So we actually meet an interesting point on this record. So two very similar songs in terms of structure. Now, of course, Dave's version is very much kind of sleazy, written about a nice, beautiful looking woman. And then you have Sammy talking about summer nights in the radio, this, that, and the other thing. So, Drop Dead Legs, great song, love it. It's classic Van Halen. It kind of shows where the band would go, especially with 5150. But I just think it has that punch that Diamond Dave brought to it. Like if Sammy Hagar did it would be Summer Nights. But I love it. I think it's a great track. One of my favorites on the album. And then we go to Summer Nights. So I think this song works a lot better in a live setting. Lyrically, this is shit. Complete, total cow shit on a hot concrete summer day. And I just think, like, especially when we're going out to the old fishing hole and going get some human toys, like stupid junk like that. It's Sammy, I guess, thinks is clever, but it's not. I just don't. I don't understand why he writes stuff like this. And I know people eat it up. There are people online all the time talking about how great Sammy's lyrics are and how philosophical and stuff like. I mean, which is complete bullshit. Like this is like fifth grade lyrical writing. It's not good. The chorus is catchy. I will give it that. I like the chorus a lot. Summer nights in the radio, this, that, and the other. I can't remember the rest of it. And all my friends, don't you know, or whatever the freaking lyrics. I've heard these songs enough, but I just cannot remember the lyrics when it comes time to do one of these shows. But I overall prefer Drop Dead Legs by far. I think it's a much better song. I don't remember if they performed the song on the 5150 tour. I know they played it on the last tour they did before Eddie passed away and all. They brought this song into the set and it actually sounded pretty freaking good. So I would be surprised if they didn't play it on 1984. I don't think they did though. So there you go. So Stephen, take Drop Dead Legs and Summer Nights.
Yeah. Summer Nights is one of my personal favorites of Van Halen. Period. So I'm going to be a little bit biased for that. I know Devin doesn't like that song, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's just something you do or you don't like for me. Like it's an album track. For sure, both of these songs to me. I mean, Drop Dead Legs would be a little bit more of something that's. In fact, I did hear this on. I heard Drop Dead Legs on the radio one time. It wasn't like it was one of those stations that plays like all kind of stuff, like alternative stuff, rock, metal, everything. So I heard this and I was like, what? of all the songs that it's like they choose like those album tracks. They don't choose stuff like Jump or Panama. They choose like off the wall stuff. Now, like I said, Summer Nights is just one of my personal favorites. So I'm going to say definitely that's my favorite of the two. They're both really good, and actually Drop Dead Legs is basically AC/DC all over again. So it's just kind of like a copycat killer type thing. So I don't know. It's just not as that song is not as original or not as I don't know. It's just it doesn't sound like something that Eddie would write as much. It almost sounds like something that he just listened to and was like, oh, well, let's just use. And David was like, oh, let's just use that idea. And that's probably what happened there. And I mean, just listen to it. It's AC/DC. I mean,
Alrighty, so the next one on here, I laugh because this is fixed to get interesting. So, by interesting, I mean kind of a no shit moment for this podcast. But Hot for Teacher versus Best of Both Worlds. I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to give it right over to Stephen. Put two and two together here on Hot for Teacher versus Best of Both Worlds. So, Stephen, give your opinions on this interesting combination.
I just can't believe that anybody would ever put down Sammy Hagar's lyrics because they're deep and they're just so they're so deep and you just they make so much sense. Like going down to a fishing hole and make it a pole. I mean that's just a great lyric. I just he just comes up with stuff that just is just amazing and just great stuff, man. So yeah, I mean, Hot for Teacher. Um, okay, so track number 10 and 11. Um, we have Dale Earnhardt Jr. and the Intimidator. So yes, bye.
Alrighty, so the next one on here is I'll Wait against Of Walks In. So two very similar songs once again. I kind of view these two as kind of the same song on a different album. So I'll Wait is about as closest to David Lee Roth ever got to a ballad with Van Halen. I'd say this and then A Simple Rhyme are the two closest he ever got to a ballad. Maybe Secrets count there as well. I kind of look at Secrets as more of a pop rock song. But or Push Comes to Shove is another one that I kind of view in that same situation or same perspective. So I love the song. It has the co-write of Michael McDonald, who of course was in the Doobie Brothers, and that didn't exist for a long time. He was uncredited for a long, long time, and then here, like, several years back, they started crediting him on the albums. I believe with the remasters that came out of the David Lee Roth stuff. I believe 2014 was when that came out. I can't remember. I've got most of them other than Van Halen 2 here on the shelf. Yeah, I love it. It's a great song. The lyrics are great. You have that drum feel that is between that and In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, like the two most iconic drum feels in my opinion. But then we move to Love Walks In, which I really love. I think this is a genuinely well done rock ballad. I think that Sammy Hagar, of course, he was writing about being abducted by aliens or whatever, or at least writing about aliens. I think he wrote about something that he was genuinely interested in, and I think when he does that, that is that really shows that he could do decent lyrics. I think there's nothing wrong with this track at all. I think down to Sammy's singing, which is more in his range, more like he did on his solo material. I think this is a genuinely good hard rock ballad. And to me, there's nothing at all wrong with it. So between the two, though, I would definitely have to give this to I'll Wait. I love Walks In, but me, I'll Wait's the better song. It's much more. This is once again a prime example of if David Lee Roth did Love Walks In, this is what you get. It's much more of a. It's much more harder edged, and the lyrics are like about this woman, this photographer, or whatever. Or that's kind of the gist you get from it. And I know they did start a video and just never finished it, but between the two, I'll Wait to me is the better song here. So, Steven, take I'll Wait versus Love Walks In.
Yeah, you're nuts. I have to disagree with you. Yeah, Love Walks In. That is probably one of the better Sammy songs. Um, like I said, Summer Nights is my personal favorite, but Love Walks In is one that I would definitely go back to versus I'll Wait. Oh, definitely, it's not a bad song, but it's definitely an album track. I would say. It's musically like musically it's just not as it's not written as much. It seems like to be. It's not in the same vein as Love Walks In, obviously, musically or lyrically. And you know, 5150, all the songs on that record had a certain they had a certain attitude about them, I guess. And everything David Lee Roth writes, it's hard to put into words and explain. But like, if you know, you know, I guess. But like with David Lee Roth, it just has a different tone to it than Sammy Hagar. Like David's lyrics are better, but I feel like Sammy Hagar is better at writing a absolute hit song. But just I mean, whether David Lee Roth is in Van Halen or if he's in a solo career, it doesn't matter. He has the same style to you know, and it's two different singers. Like David Lee Roth doesn't have a range like Sammy Hagar, but he has better lower end type of a voice than Sammy. Um, so it's just two different writing styles. It's so hard to say, well, this one's better than that. But to me, just my personal favorite, yeah, What Love Walks In. Um, and like, I'll Wait is one of those, like I mentioned before. If I'm listening to the whole record, I mean, of course, I wouldn't skip over it. I would listen to it, but I just wouldn't pick it out necessarily to just go. You know, I'm just sitting around going, "Oh, I want to listen to I'll Wait." You know, that doesn't really happen, honestly. So it's just the way the songs are structured. So bye.
All righty, so we move to the next tracks on here. So, Girl Gone Bad versus 5150. So, the title track from that record. So, Girl Gone Bad started as a kind of an instrumental jam on the Diver Down tour. If you watch the US Festival, you can see Somebody Get Me a Doctor, and then they threw in Girl Gone Bad as kind of this jam in the middle of the song. I love it. Fantastic. Musically, it is one heck of a song. I love what Dave brings to the song. It's very simple, but it completely works for the song. It could have very well have worked as an instrumental, in my opinion, because that's one thing you didn't get on the Van Halen records was like this Alex and Eddie instrumental. Like you would have thought with those two being in the band together and playing off of one another as much as they did, you would think they would put out at least an instrumental an album of where they're just jamming it out. But of course, that didn't happen until Balance with Baluchatherium or Baluchatherium, whatever the heck you want to call that song, which is a pretty cool track, but whatever case may be with that. But that against 5150. So it's kind of the same song to me. Once again, 5150 to me, it could have worked as an instrumental. But I don't mind what Sammy brought to the track. It's fine. It's a perfectly fine rock song. But it's definitely, as Steven said a minute ago, it's a deep track. It's an album track. And I know they performed it on the tour, so I can't really call it filler, but I have to go with Girl Gone Bad in this situation. I think that's the vastly much better song compared to the two. So I definitely have to give it to Girl Gone Bad. So Steven, take Girl Gone Bad versus the title track 5150.
Well, I think this is probably the hardest choice out of any of the choices that we have to make for the songs. I think both of them. I think both of them are masterpieces. But I mean, I really just personally, I mean, I go back to both of them, but really 5150. I mean, I mean, that's my personal favorite. It kind of edges it out, but I mean, I gotta say, like that that one off of 84 is probably better. It could be better. It depends on what mood I'm in. I would like that better than like freaking Jump and stuff like that. Like, I mean, most of the time, if I'm going to listen to this record, I would listen to the latter half of this record. You know, like the last like 3 or 4 songs, and like 84, I feel like it's just weird because the first half of the record, you know, I know it's a band that they want to put their hits and stuff at the start of the album. That everybody does that, but the thing is, it creates this thing where, and it's not just this album; it's every album from this era. Another one I think was from '86. We did before. Um, it was like this too. Like it's a pattern. You have the hits at the beginning of the album. Then after that, once the hits stop, you have a bunch of album tracks, and it's like two. It's almost like two different albums. You know, I wish they would just kind of cut that up a little bit. You know, like have start off maybe with the hit, maybe that's fine, and then go from the hit to, you know, then maybe an off track, and then not off track, but I guess you could understand what I'm saying. Like one that's not necessarily a hit, but it's a good song for the record. And but you get what my gist here. With 5150, I will say they did a lot better job of mixing up their stuff. They didn't throw all the songs to the front of the album, the hits, and then at the end, you know, they could have done this. They could have put they could have put Get Up at the end, and then put Good Enough, and then obviously Inside is at the end. So that they could have put them three at the end, which they didn't. I'm glad they didn't, honestly, because you know it just kind of breaks up the monotony of that. Because QR3 19, I think it was 86. It was the same year that 5150 was. You know, I could be dead wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the same year that this was released. They were both released the same year. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know how I got to that, but that's just a point I was going to make too. I thought about while he was talking. I was like, yeah, QR3. That reminds me so much of both of these records in a way, but mainly 5150. And I was like, yeah, this is the same year. But anyway, I digress from that point, and I just don't know. So bye.
Alrighty, so we move to the final track on each respective album. House of Pain versus Inside. House of Pain is classic Van Halen at its finest. It was, of course, a song written back during the early days. It's on those Gene Simmons demos that are out there in the bootleg universe. And it's heavy freaking metal to a T. I love it. Classic Van Halen song. A great closer to this album and the original bands, or at least the original era of the original band. It's a perfect freaking song. Start to freaking finish. Even the whole thing of where Dave's a little bit lower in the mix when he first starts singing, that's just adds to the freaking song. Then we get to Inside. It's as far removed as Van Halen could ever get. The lyrics are shit. I know a lot of people praise the line. Well, I got somebody's. I walked into somebody's shoes and I walked like somebody else, which is of course a dig at Dave. I'm positive that's what it is. This right here is another prime example of how Sammy Hagar just doesn't freaking know how to write lyrics at times. Like, this is stupid. And like, for this to end off the album, it takes this album out with a whimper. And then you have like the song I Want Some Action, or I Want Action, that was an unreleased outtake that ended up being bootleg. Why the crap didn't you finish that and put this on here as the ending? Or even Eagles Fly. I know a lot of people hate that song, but I've heard that was brought forth for the 5150 album. Like, I would have preferred that song to this. Like, what in the crap were they thinking? But once again, to kind of defend the song, I think Dave could have taken this to a decent place. I honestly do. I think Dave could have taken this to an interesting place, especially with his lyrical writing and the way his personality is. It could have been at least something kind of decent with him. Like, musically, it's not really a problem. Like, if you would have beefed up the guitars, it could have been a pretty heavy song. But I know they never played this song live. I'm surprised they did, honestly, knowing how Sammy is. So, Stephen, take Inside or House of Pain versus Inside.
Well, this is probably the easiest decision of decisions. Honestly, like, I just don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to really imagine like what they were in the studio, and they were getting ready to release this, and they were just sitting there and just listening to this, and they were like, oh yeah, man, like, I mean, Inside is just a great closer, man. Like, that's just, I mean, it just doesn't sound like a loop of, I mean, honestly, I think I might have said this before, but this song just Inside reminds me of Pink Floyd, Breaking the Wall. And just bear with me. Think about it. When they're singing the inside, when like the chorus part, I guess you would call it. That's what it's just the structure of it. They were trying to do like a Pink Floyd type thing, but it bombed.
I can see it. I can see it.
Okay,
Sure.
it bombed, buddy. I mean, just think. I mean, I know the audience will probably gonna be like, really, but just think about it. Listen to the songs back to back, and you'll see that's what they were going for, but they completely missed the mark. Like it went wildly off from the mark. um, I seriously, I mean, but despite myself, I want to say this song had some bit of potential, but it was just doomed from the start because, I mean, I feel like Dave could have took this riff and he could have done something with it. He could have. I mean, it might not have been a hit, but it would have been something. This is just nothing. There is no there is no argument here. Like, I mean, I just and the last two songs on 84 are both tremendous. You don't need to put it at the end or next to the end. I want to have a really good song. So when that's the last thing you hear, and it tops off the album, and it puts the icing on the cake. You don't want something. You don't. If you listen to a record and you have your first impression, your first song, and then you got your last impression, that matters too to me. You know what I'm saying? If the
Your
last
final
song on a
track.
record, if it sucks, you know what I'm saying? Like you're just it leaves a bad taste in your mouth for the whole record. Like, oh
The
God,
last
I
song
don't want to listen to that again.
should leave you wanting more. It should leave you wanting more. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. It's like it's like a movie. If it just if it just ends with some stupid scene that just leaves you hanging that has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. I mean, does that make any sense? That's basically what this does. It takes a pretty good album, not great, pretty good album overall, and just tops it off with this stupid song, and it's just ridiculous. So, bye.
Alrighty, so that brings us to the grand finale. So let me figure this up here. So for 1984, I preferred the title track. I preferred Jump. I preferred Panama. I preferred Drop Dead Legs, Hot for Teacher, I'll Wait, Girl Gone Bad, and House of Pain. 1984, you preferred Jump, Panama, Hot for Teacher, and House of Pain. So that's 4 songs that you preferred. So on 5150, you preferred Good Enough, Dreams, Summer Nights, Love Walks In, and 5150. On 5150, I preferred Only Dreams. So that is 8 out of the 9 for me on 1984. And
That says it all right there.
yeah, so you kind of seem to prefer 5150 a little bit more. I figured with you it would be much more divided up because I know how you kind of think with a lot of songs as opposed to the way I think with a lot of stuff. I guess you kind of prefer the more eccentric kind of stuff than to me, where I like the eccentric stuff, but I like a band to kind of stay at their roots of what they really are. So overall, I mean, you liked 5 songs on 5150 against 4 songs. So yeah, or 4 songs on 1984 is what I meant. So I mean, that brings an end to the record. I far preferred 1984 to 5150. And I like 5150. I really do. I think it's a good album for what it is. But I prefer OU812 to the record, and especially Balance. I think Balance is one of the best they ever did at that time. And You notice I didn't say for unlawful carnal knowledge. I really don't think very much of that record, but we'll get there at some point. So, I mean, do you have anything else to add to this conversation before we start wrapping it up?
Well, I think this is the direction we're going to go in the future for the episodes because it adds some spice to it for sure. It's not just one album; it's multiple albums, and it's you know albums that are probably similar, um, and maybe not so similar. Some other ones we're going to do in the future. So, I mean, it's just I kind of like to branch out some, and usually it seems to do a little better views wise if we kind of throw a little bit something different in there besides this album, review. If we throw a little bit different concept within the same kind of topics, it's more interesting. There's more argument sake type stuff. Um, and it's room for perspective, that's for sure. So bye.
All right, and yeah, I agree. I think this is an interesting way to take the channel going forward. Not just doing this kind of thing, but I mean, continuing with our lists that we do at times, like our best of or top five or whatever that we've done in the past, and looking at other articles. I think that's a cool thing to do. Then, I mean, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone doing these kind of album versus albums because you're reviewing the album essentially, like what or discussing the album is probably the better way. But I think this is going to be kind of interesting. I mean, of course, for the people that listen, I mean, let us know what you think in the comments. And there's a mountain of possibilities of stuff that we could compare to one another, whether it be in albums by different artists or whatever the case may be. I mean, taking like a second album, say like Van Halen 2, and comparing it to Hotter Than Hell by Kiss or whatever the case may be. I mean, it's a mountain of possibilities. But I hope you all enjoy this record or enjoy this record. Enjoy this. You can tell we haven't recorded an episode in a while because I haven't been able to talk during half of this episode. But I hope you all enjoy this episode. Like, comment, and subscribe. Give us some feedback. Tell us if you like us. Tell us if you hate us. Tell us if you think we're just simply okay. If you think we're a bunch of backwoods country hicks, I mean, tell us that. We don't care. Just give us some feedback. So that is it for this episode of the Dungan-Mott Music and Movie Podcast. And God bless you. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay frosty, stay free, and keep on rocking. Till next time. See you then.